While I totally enjoy a guideline, I don't like being told what to do. And I'm willing to bet that if you're here, it means that you are a creative, which usually means that you also like to break a rule or two. It means we like an arm's length of creative expression. So I'm here to give you a very simple formula that will allow you to learn the rules and heck, even digest them and follow them for a bit if you so desire, until you return to that icky feeling of restriction. Because when that happens, you will know exactly how to break free of the feeling of constraint and still be effective with your efforts. So I'm coming in with a hot, unpopular opinion, and you'll see why as we get toward the end of your workbook that I have created for you. And if you haven't already, be sure to snag it at the link that is on the screen. Have it ready as we dive into this segment on developing your own unique style. While you're snagging your workbook, I will properly introduce myself. I am Peggy Dean. I am an artist, author, and educator. Mostly I love being able to facilitate creative resources for anyone and everyone. It's my jam. And I want to connect with you guys on some creative realness for a moment. Category is niching. I'm sure that word elicits some form of response in you because as artists, we hear that niching is so important, and initially it makes us feel that we can only create, one way with just few subject matters, but that's not the case. Not when you're a beginner and not when you're seasoned. So that being said, niching is an important concept to grasp, and here's why. First, I'll say that sure, having an identifiable style will inevitably help you stand out and be known for said style, for sure. And when people think of that style, they could very well think of you. But not all of us operate that way. It's especially not in the first few years of that sacred discovery journey. So I'm going to help you to get a jump start on niching before you're ready to actually commit to a niche. So essentially, niching without niching. So bear with me for a moment before we jump into establishing your style identity. Niching is less about style and more about marketing. Ew, marketing, I know. But that means establishing a niche and letting us reach our target audience, whether it be direct to consumer or to a brand's customers. This is my cat's tail. But this is where we have the opportunity to turn our broader interests into more intentional decisions as we continue creating what we love. So I'll break this down in a nutshell so that this session isn't all about marketing and we can get on to, the fun part that actually gives you permission to play, because that's what this is really all about. All right, your target market is essentially defined as a particular group of people that businesses, services, or products find success in sales within. But I want to redefine niche markets. I think that the word relatable works much better. So think about your target market as like-minded folk who will be receptive to your vibe when you put it out and to your design choices. I personally do this by working in collections because it allows me to create many different things while cycling through styles or themes, and I get to still experiment. I get to still exercise my need for creative exploration. So allow me to introduce some examples. When it comes to monetizing artwork, there are a lot of options. So you can license your pieces, your designs, you can create custom commissions, you can sell physical items, you can sell at markets, on your own e-commerce site. In a perfect world, we would create whatever we want and license that existing work because it would be ideal to make the work that we love and then have someone jump to buy, obviously. But we live in a reality where that's just not the way it goes. With that being said, what can happen is that a company sees your work and likes it enough that they may request a custom design for them just based off of what you've already created. So here's how you can make multiple styles work. When your portfolio has a broad selection existing of chaos in its constantly changing style, you can organize it so it doesn't feel that way and it doesn't come across that way. So you can create large groupings of similar styles and focuses, which visually will show consistency in a style. And as a bonus, it gives clients more to see as far as versatility, but they're not feeling like they're getting lost in your work in a bad way. When my work is viewed on my portfolio, I have the opportunity to get that kind of work. As an example, by simply existing online, like having work on sites like Dribbble, Behance, Pinterest, even Society6 and Redbubble, Companies who are looking for art can find me there. And guess what? These brands are individuals who are looking to buy. They're not just simply plugging in generic search terms on Google. They are looking for artists where artists already exist online. And it doesn't mean that your work needs to be some big hot commodity either. So for example, my Society 6 is not a huge hit by any means, but it does well enough to throw a little extra cash my way each month, which doesn't hurt, right? But looking at an even bigger and much more unexpected picture, my work has been noticed, sought after, and licensed because brands and companies who are seeking artists find my work there. So while my designs might not be in the trending categories on the platform, my pieces have been licensed numerous times just because they were found where artists can be found. I'm trying to make the point that I think you should absolutely create what it is that you want to create, and you can build your portfolio around your beliefs and your sense of humor and your personality, your quirks and your interests, and in turn, announce it to the world where it makes sense to put it. So insert my unpopular opinion, create first, niche second. Even the most seasoned artists pivot years into their creative careers. So go with the flow, your flow, just do it mindfully. And then your style will develop on its own the more and more you experiment. So let's get you off to a solid start toward that direction. Now that we got all that woo-woo stuff out of the way, it's time to get to work. So I want you to actually write this stuff down, because when we write out our thought process, we are much more committed to the work, and we can reach a shift in our mindset to actually have the confidence to proceed. So grab the workbook that I gave you guys, and grab a pen, pencil, marker, I don't care, and write down your answers to the following questions. We're gonna start general though, and we'll dive deeper as we progress together. So I first want you to answer these two questions. What are your passions and interests, and what are your go-to styles? If I gave two people the exact same quote and told them to recreate it however they wanted, and the only guidelines would be that it had to be a modern calligraphic style, it doesn't really narrow much down. They would still have the creative freedom of color palette, of weight line, the vibe that the piece would evoke. So for example, solid and playful monoline calligraphy versus ornamental, calligraphy full of flourishes. So keep these loosely in mind as we get deeper and all summer campy with each other in a minute, because before that, I'm eager to talk about color. It is one of my favorite topics in relationship to just about anything and everything, because it is incredibly persuasive, emotive, and it has similar psychological effects as music does and smell. Think about the artwork that inspires you. Do you notice a recurring theme coming up? What colors come up again and again? Now ask, are the colors that you've gravitated toward, cool colors like blues and violets, or are they warm colors like reds and oranges? Maybe you have a full spectrum of color and you just can't get enough. So take a moment to explore the art that you've collected around your home or even a Pinterest board, and note down what you're drawn to. And then digging deeper, after you do that, look at the individual colors on their own. For example, if you see red coming up over and over, is it a poppy red? Or maybe it's like a deep wine color or maroon. Pay attention to the different hues in the main colors, the shades and the tones of the colors that you love. Do you notice that these certain colors evoke certain vibes or feelings? So you might see somebody wearing a yellow sweater and immediately feel that they are friendly and warm. Or you could walk into a restaurant with emerald green accents and you feel like you're in this lush, refreshing forest. Identifying the descriptors of colors can help us understand what we like about a piece of art. It will also help us as we create so that we can rely on an emotive response through color. Some examples to describe color are lively, energetic, vibrant, or perhaps a piece is more subdued and even neutral. It could be described as earthy and organic. Other descriptors, feminine, soft, dimensional, flat, harmonious, and so on. So referring to the makeup of the color wheel will open up combinations that you may not have thought of before. I won't bore you with the study of the color wheel here, even though I could totally talk about this all day because I find it the opposite of boring, but I do want to give you some examples of how you can use the basic color rules to bring unique combinations into the equation of your work. And the reason why is because moods can so easily be translated through colors, especially in certain color combinations, just as they do when they stand on their own. So while the color wheel may be basic knowledge to a lot of artists, it is a good time to revisit it when it comes time to using color combinations and groupings. In these examples, I have selected some pretty loud colors, but the same will apply to any shades and hues. So the first one here is a monochromatic color theme. It's actually the same color with different shades and tints. I mean, I'm all about like green on green on green. It might work better than you'd first imagine it to. Analogous colors are my personal favorite. They sit next to each other on a color wheel, so rather than mixing them together, they're simply paired together. So like red and pink for Valentine's Day is a great example of analogous colors. Triad colors, combination of 3 colors that are evenly spaced on the color wheel. Taking it back to basics, this could be the primary set of red, blue, and yellow. Then we have complementary colors. There are 2 colors on the opposite end of the color wheel. So some example pairings that are the go-tos: yellows and violets, red and green, blue and orange. And then there are even more color categories beyond the basics, so I encourage you to dig into it, experiment with each of these categories throughout your creative process, and you'll figure out like the things that you discover about your preferences may be surprising. So for now, I want you to select one category of color combinations, write it down in your workbook, and color combinations within that category that you'll be exploring more this week. So let's now look at supporting elements to your work. So this might look like geometric shapes, illustrative elements, unique lettering placement that kind of fits together like a puzzle, maybe even just clean and crisp designs where your lettering or calligraphy stands out on its own. When you observe this work of yours, what supporting motifs, patterns, other elements, what accompanies your lettering, if any? After you've observed the styles and the colors that you gravitate toward, now you want to think about the words that you're using, because we have this opportunity in a lettering space to say so much more with our messaging because it's literal messaging. So if you want to open yourself up as the unique creature that you are, rather than regurgitating all of the pretty or punny quotes that like every other artist is creating that you see everywhere, maybe think about how you can narrow it down to something more specific. So take a look back at your general interests and your values. Generally speaking, do you enjoy sports? Maybe you have a thing for trash TV. Are you a vegetarian? Do you want to speak up on behalf of civil rights? As artists, we have the opportunity to use words louder because we pair them with imagery of sorts. So I'm willing to bet that you will stand out so much more by creating pieces that aren't repeated over and over already in a saturated market of like live, laugh, love. So dive into your workbook again. Create a list identifying a few of your main interests, and don't overthink this part. These interests should just pop up organically for you. My example here is I love animals. I also love random facts. Just those 2 things lets me take them and connect them and make them like this cutie lettering piece that informs and delights, if I may say so. But if you're a hand lettering artist who obsesses about things like travel, you could niche that down into like lettering travel quotes that could be created as stickers and inserted into travel journals, maybe quirky travel postcards. You can create lettering in shapes or silhouettes of like country or state borders and then filling them with hand lettering words representing that place. That could be used as wall art. Not only is this allowing you to niche, it's playing into what you already love doing. So let's go even deeper. In addition to your main interests, you may have deeper sub niches to explore. Using my example of animals, I have been able to personally branch into more specific interests like animal rights, cruelty-free resources, wildlife preservation. And I began doing this through my art, and as a brand, I've been able to educate people alongside my work. And speaking of trusting the process and going along the journey of discovery as we create, I was just kind of brainstorming in my mind in my creative process of how I could really infuse my values in my bottom line, which opened a door for me to do something I never really thought of before, which was creating a boutique line of professional grade, cruelty-free artist brushes and pens. Not only that, but I found a way to donate a proceeds of all of the sales that we make each month to a different animal welfare nonprofit working toward the rehabilitation and preservation of wildlife and their habitats. So because of that organic progression, my brand is able to tell a story now. So it built up to that. So whether or not at this point, whether or not my work is obviously talking about animals, when my work is seen, my values are kind of just like an unspoken underlying part of the story that my style is telling. And this all comes down to trusting the process and letting yourself explore. So when you're finished with your sub-interests in your workbook, I want you to circle 3 sub-niches from each category and write them down in the main boxes on the following pages. These pages are where you will explore what to create and what you'll do with the art you make. Combining all of these questions is a great formula to finding that sweet spot of determining your niche, or perhaps your niche for the moment. That's okay too. You can think of this as creating in batches or even in seasons. So maybe that season is 3 weeks, maybe it's 3 months, but in that time, you're focusing on creating pieces that are consistent and have a common thread throughout all of your work. And when you feel that season coming to a pivot, you just follow your intuition. It will unlock creative doors for you, I promise. And in the meantime, you'll have a consistent thread that will stand out as you. And I know that hearing all of this stuff, it can be motivating, but it doesn't feel necessarily directional. And there's a reason for that. So if you're feeling that on any level, it means that you have more work to do. And you have to trust that. It's like, what direction do you take from there? Well, you sit down and you put pen to paper or brush to canvas or stylus to iPad, whatever applies. You do the work. You trust the process. You allow yourself to play and explore. You release the pressure of expectations and the unknown. And one day you're going to be telling somebody this exact same thing. They may not understand it, but you'll be confident in letting them know that they have permission to trust the art of organically discovering what sets them apart and lets them shine. Because there's so much guesswork in the world of creativity, I'm going to invite you to join us inside a member-based community of mentorship, industry-leading resources, and support for artists of all stages, full of people who speak your language. So, all for now, and I will see you guys on the internet.